Greetings and welcome back, one and all, to the Creative Outlet Podcast, or the COP. My name is Brandon Pudwill, and I am your regular host for this show. Today's date is June 21st, 2021, and hallelujah, school's finished. But before I dive into that, actually, I do want to make a point here for saying that if you're somebody who prefers to listen to segments, those are the separate videos that get released after the initial release of the regular episode. For this particular episode, just because of the nature of the episode itself, I have elected to not create separate segment videos for this because, as I will talk about soon here, this isn't going to be a traditional episode, but instead I will be employing YouTube's timestamp system. So if you really just want to head right into the main discussion and skip this lovely intro I have here, please check out the video description for the appropriate time link. Otherwise, I am ready to get into this show. So like I said, yay, school's over. So I suppose this would be a good time, since September is approaching real fast, to remind everybody of the fall plans for this year. My goal during the fall is to release a new episode of the Creative Outlet Podcast every 2 weeks, which fortunately should be exactly enough episodes to get me through the fall semester, since those are like 15 weeks. They can't be 14, they can't be 16, it's 15. So I should have 7 episodes, which should just about get me through. And this is going to be in a series called the Creative Outlet Gaming Birthday Extravaganza, where we'll be covering a variety of gaming-related anniversaries happening in 2021. And the episodes, in no particular order, are going to be focused on a variety of anniversaries that I would be interested in, including the Ace Attorney 20th anniversary, the SNES's 30th anniversary, the Sonic the Hedgehog 30th anniversary, the Legend of Zelda 35th anniversary, the Nintendo 3DS's 10th anniversary, which is mind-blowing to me. And I have to admit there are a couple of changes to discuss from my original plan. So I already put out a separate video discussing these plans, but I had to make some changes because I was wrong. So I planned to have one of my episodes being a mashup of some anniversaries that I didn't think it'd be like, oh, I'm going to have like 2 hours of stuff to say on this. Focused on the Nintendo 64, the Wii, and the PlayStation 2. But of course I'm going based on North American anniversaries, and wouldn't you know it, the PS2 came out in 2000. So originally I was also going to have a separate episode on the Nintendo GameCube and the Game Boy Advance, since they both released in 2001, and instead I decided to plop those two, for sure the GameCube, into this episode. So now it's going to be N64, Wii, GameCube instead. But because now I need to make a new episode, I have plans for an episode that I'm surprised I didn't want to do when I initially made these plans, which is the 40th anniversary of Donkey Kong. So at this point, as of when I'm recording this, there are 2 of these 7 episodes recorded, and the third should be recorded this Thursday. So by the time you see this video actually release it, or listen to the audio, it should be recorded. Of course, I can't make any promises, but the plan is to do it that way, and I have no reason to think that should not work out. But of course, my final reminder for this is to talk about the format. The intros for all of those are going to be recorded separately before the episode releases to cover any possible updates. If there's a new Donkey Kong game announced after I recorded that bit, and I didn't say there was any. But there's also, of course, going to be some news of the day that happens in the fall as well that I would be unable to cover if I just released those intro included. So, with that out of the way, I actually do want to give a class update as I've been doing, because one of the classes I took this summer, I didn't talk about this in the update video for some reason. I really should have. But one of the classes I took this summer was actually focused on podcasts. So I took this summer class. It was a pair of 4-week classes. And it's a class that the university only offers during the summer for whatever reason. I don't know why. I would offer it for 14 weeks of the regular year as well, but whatever. If he doesn't want to, that's up to him. But it's essentially a communication arts class on podcasting, and I want to share some opinions on this class. I liked it, but there's quite a few things I would have changed. So for starters, I just want to point out that all of the communication arts classes seem to follow, there's a pretty similar story that happens regarding the content. So it's usually a new form of communication is made. In this case, it's podcasting, and it's dominated by largely the wealthy and the powerful and the white. In this case, podcasting was mostly done by white nerdy guys like me, but even nerdier than me, because they did not have the easy technologies like I have. And then a new form of it is made. Oh man, all these technologies. I have a not super duper fancy microphone in front of me that I don't have to be super knowledgeable to still be able to use. And that puts it in the hands of regular people, including diverse people. And then some way the powerful find a way to take it back. Even though all of these new affordances have come to regular people, they've found a way to take it back, usually in the form of consolidating new media into legacy media. The example he used in the class is how the Joe Rogan Experience, arguably the most famous podcast in the world, is now exclusively on Spotify, which, yes, is frustrating for me as somebody who occasionally wants to listen to episodes, particularly a couple of the ones that actually just came out this past week. But I digress. Similarly, oh goodness, I was just thinking about it. There's another piece to it that he talked about that's a consistent theme in these classes, but I quite literally just blanked on it, so apologies. Maybe if I think of it later, I'll add it in. But the point I want to make here is, wait, no, I thought of it. What happens now that we have all these technologies with new affordances, especially with YouTube and obviously podcasting, is there is this theme in comm arts classes that, there's so much more stuff out there, but is it really actually getting out there and consumed? And I mean, I will admit, I think that is kind of important, if only because I do see that in my own show. I admit I have a show, doesn't really have much of an audience at the moment. Maybe one day that will change, and everybody will be laughing at me and be like, well, what the heck's Brandon talking about here? We're a heckin' bunch of people who watch. But at the moment, that is not the case. And that is another theme of these courses is there's a lot of people making stuff, but does that matter when it isn't really being consumed by anyone? And I think that is a valid topic to talk about. And that's the thing. These are fine and important stories, but man, professors, you gotta find a way to make that story more unique, because I can only hear it so many times before I'm like, I've heard this before, and I think I get it. Speaking of other things I wasn't a fan of, to me, the professor, even if it wasn't conscious, had a preference for a particular type of podcast, and it is distinctly not this style. He seems to prefer the the NPR style. I would describe it as similar to like This American Life, or I think another one that's famous is like Planet Money. I call them docucasts in a way, because it's essentially taking like a documentary and just making it in an audio format. And I want to say that's fine, but I do wish we had a moment to pay respect to this type of podcast, because I'm just saying, it isn't like making this requires no effort or no artistic talent. So I was a little frustrated that we didn't talk about these talk show style podcasts. I also just kind of wish that the class had been able to be 6 weeks. I know that the university doesn't offer a 6-week summer period, but with the way that things were done, having a couple of weeks would have made things significantly easier. So our final project, for example, was to make an 8 to 12 minute podcast, and it had to follow that style I just described. But before that, we had to submit a pitch in the 3rd week. So it wasn't really clear, like, should we start on this earlier? Should we wait until we get approved with the pitch? Like, does the pitch actually really matter? Or is it just something that's scored for points? So, like, if I ran the class, I would have required, like, first I would have said, regardless of your pitch, I want you to continue on the show you want to make, but I'm going to tell you where your pitch is not necessarily meeting what you need to do here. And like I said, I would have required it to be due either in the end of the 1st week or the end of the 2nd week, because putting together a podcast is not quick. Obviously, it takes me 2 hours of it is just sitting here and talking, depending on how long it goes. Maybe it's less than 2 hours. But it's even harder in that style, even when you are making something that's as short as 12 minutes. Because of all the extra little bits you have to do, especially the editing. But I can talk a little bit more about the final podcast in a little bit, because I want to discuss some of the assignments that I had before that. The first 2 big ones, and I guess this is true of some of the labs as well, seemed kind of unrelated. So, like, I guess I shouldn't say they're entirely unrelated. I understand the idea behind them is basically to help students who are unfamiliar with these technologies actually become familiar with them. But I guess I'm not also convinced that these assignments helped with that, because, and maybe this is just my experience, but the situations we are put in are not similar to podcast situations in any way. So, like, for one assignment, I had to walk around for a couple of minutes capturing a soundscape. So I went outside to the local yokel beach and got sounds there. That is not something that I would need to do for a podcast. I also had to capture some sounds to show the essence of an image. So I went with something easy, accessible. I went with my car. And I attached some sounds like I recorded, the ignition, that sound. And I did like the gears shifting. It's not a manual, because I can't drive stick shift. What do I look like? But I got that. I got things like the radio and the AC. But again, that's not very podcast-like. So I'm not sure how that was supposed to help. There was an assignment where I just had to record 8 to 15 sounds and make them into a list, which also somehow you needed to get 8 to 15 sounds that lasted 2 to 3 minutes, which is absolutely ridiculous to me, just because most sounds are not super long. Again, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm just saying a lot of sounds are really short sounds. And I guess thinking more about the final project, I wasn't a fan of the stringent requirements, because to me, they make the podcast less natural. And, because one of my goals here with the COP, the Creative Outlet Podcast, is that I want it to be as natural as possible. I don't want to seem scripted. Like, I mean, obviously right now I'm sitting in front of 28 pages of stuff that I wrote, because I'm bad at just remembering and completely improvising. But, I'm not just like sitting here and reading the exact things that I'm saying in the same way. I find that's less natural. I try to branch out from what I've written, or sometimes I improvise some stuff. And I know there was an episode where I experimented, like, well, what if I did write less things and see how that worked? And I mean, it worked out fine. I should probably try to stick more in that format, in my opinion, if I want to continue being more natural. But for this, I scripted exactly what was going to come out of my mouth, with some like small, tiny word exceptions that I just like misread. And part of that is because of the requirements I had to meet. Like, my intro had to be a 5 to 60-second bit that is a calling card and is a succinct summary of the essence of the show, which, like, I think you can do that. And I tried, obviously I have a pretty similar intro in every episode here of the COP, but it doesn't really work as a calling card or as a succinct summary, and I don't think that's necessarily what people want out of podcasts. Like, it would work for that style, that docucast style, but it doesn't work for what I do, and that's just something I don't like. I similarly had to include an interview, which of course that's not the easiest thing to book a week ahead of the project being due. And the problem with including an interview is, man, it's hard to get like a 3-minute interview and actually ask substantive questions or get substantive answers. Like, that's the exact problem with a lot of mainstream media shows that people find, is they feel like they're not having real conversations. And that's something, like, if I were to do an interview on here, I would want to have something a little longer, so it sounds like, yeah, we had a real legit conversation here that is going to teach you things. I needed to include an ad or a call for support for the show, which that's something I obviously try to limit here on the COP as much as possible. I readily admit I do this as a hobby. I'm making $0 and 0 cents off of it. In fact, I'm mostly just spending money on it, but that's because I like doing this. This is not something that certainly anytime soon I expect to have as a job. Maybe that will change. That would be amazing if that did change, but I don't expect it. And I still, at the end, I ask people to engage in their appropriate format. Maybe they have to leave a comment. Maybe if they're on Anchor, I would love to have an audio message. I have not had a single audio message yet. I think it would be neat to have one. But I just find things like that, especially like throughout a piece, to be pretty grating, because I firmly believe that if people wanted to engage, they would engage. I mean, again, maybe I'm just like imposing myself on other people here, but it's like, if I intend to leave a comment on something, I'll leave a comment on it. Like, sure, it's nice to have a little encouragement, and that's why I still do it, and of course it is supposed to be helpful on paper in these videos, but I do not expect anyone to do that, and I don't think it should be a requirement in that sense. And then my outro had to signal or include a sample of what the next episode would include, which, again, I think is fine on paper. In fact, I actually think that is something that could work for the Creative Outlet podcast. But given that I try to cover a lot of news, you're kind of limited to what sort of new things are happening, even if I am admittedly behind on things. I can't predict that, oh man, all of a sudden the Switch update that's supposed to improve stability is causing a huge bunch of problems for people trying to download things, which I'm not talking about today, but I just talked about it. And Nintendo, come on, man. That's ridiculous. You're like, they're usually really good about that, but this has just been like a gigantic mess. So I guess the bottom line, for that is the requirements and the format of this project they're just not how I would want to do things for this show. And that's fine. I have a huge respect for people who put on shows in that style because, yeah, it's a lot of work. This is also a lot of work, but this is a lot of work. But I think the experience of making this, I made like a 9.5 minute piece, just reaffirmed for me that my preference is for making podcasts in this free-flowing, conversational-ish style. And that's fine, like I'm not opposed to making podcasts in the documentary style. I would be perfectly down for it, especially if it was something I did as a job. I would very happily make that sort of thing, assuming I could continue doing the Creative Outlet podcast on the side. But I prefer this, and that's fine. And that's part of the great thing of being a creator. So, but I want to point out my experience was not all useless because there were indeed some skills and tools I learned about that could be especially useful for the Creative Outlet podcast. And a lot of these skills were editing skills. And I spend a lot of time on the video editing as is. So I don't want to create some false illusions that these will most definitely be taken advantage of unless folks are okay with episodes coming out even later than they already are, and they already take a long time to release. But if folks don't know, though I cannot imagine that I have not mentioned it a single time, I use Audacity for recording and editing. It is a free, open source recording software that works well on lower end computers like my own. So it's perfect for my circumstances. I can record in it, I can add sounds in it and make things. It does just about everything I need. And I learned how to do a variety of editing tricks in there, some that are practical, some that are less practical. For my video viewers, since I work on that separately, and since VSDC is a pain, and I just cannot see the waveform unless I pay for it. Yeah. I'm going to try to accomplish some of these skills in VSDC so you don't have to go to anchor.fm/thecop, anchor.fm/thecop to hear all of these skills, but some of them, I'm going to tell you right now, you may just have to go to anchor.fm/thecop to hear them in the audio version. But, no worries. I will make notes on screen here for which skills I may not be able to showcase in VSDC with appropriate timestamps if you really do want to hear them in the audio version. But let me start with some of the less practical skills. We learned like a great variety of editing skills, and ironically, I feel like most of them were impractical specifically for what I want to do. So for example, I learned how to pan audio. So if I wanted to sound louder in just your right ear for some reason, I can make that happen. I can be louder in your right ear. I could come almost exclusively out of your right ear. Or I could make it, normal and be even. I mean, there are some scenarios in these documentary cast style pieces where that could be useful. Like one of the examples he gave is like if you have a car driving by, you could splice the sound to be two separate pieces and have it where you pan the one all the way to the left and the other one to the right, and then just have them flow so it sounds like a car is driving by. But that's a very specific situation. I don't think that would be very useful here. I also learned how to equalize my voice. Now, this is one that could be useful, but the first application was less useful. But the idea is it's supposed to accentuate certain parts of your voice, or it's supposed to make it sound like it's in certain conditions. So, if I were to accentuate, I would want to accentuate the low parts of my voice because I wish my voice was lower. But that's a whole separate personal issue. And for example, I could I could make it sound like I'm talking on the phone here to you instead of talking into this nice microphone. But I don't know why I would want to do that. I could make it sound like I'm coming out of walkie-talkie over. But again, I cannot find scenarios where that would be useful. I also learned how to apply a variety of effects to my voice other than the equalization bits, otherwise known as EQ. So, for example, I learned how to put reverb on my voice. And I hope this is the only time I ever use reverb in the show because past projects that you would have to go searching out really far into the internet to find, I did record stuff in like a very small room that made it sound like I was in a cave. And I don't want to intentionally sound like I'm in a cave. So, I mean, it's great I know how to use reverb. Maybe there'll be a scenario where it's useful, but I cannot foresee that scenario coming up frequently or very often. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I will always admit I could be wrong. I don't know. I learned, well, there's some effects, and these next few I generally find kind of annoying effects. In some ways, I think they could hurt your ears, so I'm going to elect to not include these in the audio. But I learned how to apply echoes to my voice, and I also learned how to stretch out and speed up what I'm saying. So we used in the lab we did this for. We used it to stretch out my voice, so it would be like I talked like this. But that, the effect, in my opinion, doesn't make it sound as good as me just trying to sound this way really slowly. Or maybe I could make myself sound really fast and not be able to understand what I say. Although, I will readily admit, I listen to things on faster speed and it's fine. And guess what? I don't have to apply an effect to something else to make it go faster. I can just make it go faster in the playback. But alas, that's just me. Now there are some, those are the less practical skills, or like fun skills. But I really want to use the practical skills here. So, for example, I also learned how to use that EQ to remove certain room tones. And I will admit, like, one of the most annoying things that happens here is when the water goes off, because it makes that kind of buzzing noise. And I guess I don't know for sure if it was the last episode or if it was one of the fall portions that I recorded already, but that happened in one of those, and that was really irritating, and I didn't know how to get it out because I hadn't learned that yet. But now I do know how to do that, and there is another method for it that I find easier than using the EQ, because I just kind of generally find it a real pain in the butt, which is noise reduction. It's a feature in Audacity that, it does what it says on the tin. It reduces certain noises. So basically what I would need to do is have a clean portion where that sound happens. I would take that as a sample, apply it to the whole piece, and then it's gone. The only problem that creates is really only for the video podcast. For the audio podcast, I can just take that sample and cut that portion out, because what I would need to do is I just kind of need to look around awkwardly for a moment, like, and like it just in the middle of a thought. And, like I said, I can cut that out of the audio without it being awkward, but I think it would look awkward in the video version, because jump cuts I find usually look awkward like that. Because it's not hard to pull it off, but it's like I don't think anyone would like it if I was here and then suddenly less than a second later I'm all the way over here or something, just because I happen to move that way, or it's like, oh, I'm waiting for the sound to finish, and so I just happen to sway the other way or something. So apologies to video viewers for my poor video quality because of that. And heck, my disdain for jump cuts is a major reason why I got this camcorder as opposed to continuing to use my regular the regular old camera, because I basically had to jump cut between segments and it looked weird. Even though I had the remote to try to make it look kind of better, I still never was in the same place at all times, and I didn't like that. But the important piece to note though is even though it may not be perfect, I have a way to remove these sounds from the recording, and that is amazing. But perhaps the most important skill that I learned is how to normalize audio. And really, that's just a fancy way of saying, now I know how to make all of my sound generally be the same volume. So, if you've listened to any secular talk, which I, of course, do frequently, you will know that Mr. Kalinsky has a bit of a problem normalizing clips. Usually he'll be pretty loud, and then videos of the news that he shows will be so much quieter, because he doesn't normalize the audio to all be the same. And this is a technique that I will admit I love it and I hate it, because I think it is genuinely very important to do, but man, doing it properly is very time consuming. Like, I genuinely probably spent 4 or 5 hours just normalizing that 9.5 minute piece, just to make it so it was all consistently around a similar audio level. Just because the way that I talk, and I could even show it to you in the editing here. Like, I have some bits that are like way up high, and some that are really, really low, just because that's how I talk, regardless of any dramatic things that I do. Like earlier when I was talking about Kyle's quiet news clips. But it's just, it takes forever to do it, and that is annoying. But it's pretty easy to do it, like the actual skill. You just have to highlight an audio clip, go into the menu, limit the audio. It takes the highest, so whatever portion of that is the highest decibel, it squishes it so that it doesn't go over the amount you specify. So if I wanted to target 4 or -4 decibels, I think it's listed as -4, but it's just, if it's 4 decibels, all right, whatever was the highest point, maybe it was at 0, it's now going to be 4, but everything else around it is going to be proportional to that. So now at least I'm not peaking over 4 decibels, but that, if I just, let's say I did that to the whole podcast, all the rest would be a lot quieter, because it took whatever happened to be the highest point in the show and made it be 4 decibels. And like I said, editing these episodes takes long enough as is. So, I don't know what I want to do with that knowledge. I can also compress the audio, which generally makes it louder. So I think that could help if I did that and then limited it to 4, but I'm not sure. So, like I said, I think it could be helpful, but the jury's still generally out on it. And, full disclosure, one day I would actually prefer, a little further in the future, to make the video version of the podcast just be in the form of a live stream, which would obviously require certain changes to the show format. But the good part of that is it would cut out all the video editing, because I can't just bring up images and videos to overlay on top of me midstream of gameplay. What you get is what you get. So video folks, you would just essentially get the live stream archive without the edits. I would still be able to make segments out of it, fortunately, and maybe if I'm feeling particularly up to it, I can do some editing in there. But doing it as a live stream would greatly improve the Creative Outlet Podcast workflow, because I could see myself then taking the time to sit down and comb through hours of audio for the audio-only listeners. But for now, I want to focus on getting stuff out at all more frequently than hey, here's a new episode after 2 or 3 months. So that's all the skills I learned. There is one tool that I learned about that I could take advantage of. I learned about this service, the professor showed it to us. It's called Zencaster. And it would be useful for me if I wanted to do some collaborative episodes. I tried in episode 5 to have a guest on that didn't work out as planned. But what Zencaster would let me do is I could get an MP3 of myself and anyone else who's on a call with me, and I could just plop them into Audacity, and lo and behold, I have a show. It can also record video, which would of course be great for the video podcast, but that runs into the issue of I wouldn't be able to record it with my nice camera here. I would have to use my webcam on my laptop, which may, honest to goodness, have the actual worst video quality I've ever seen. So I would not count on me using Zencastr for the regular show necessarily, but maybe I'll do some audio-only Creative Outlet bonuses that'll go up on the YouTube channel that use Zencastr. And of course, really the major good news with that is that means now I don't have to just work with people who are readily available and around me. I can be like, I can contact people I know from states far away and say, hey, would you be willing to do this with me on this day? And we can record it and get it done, and it's basically ready to release other than some audio editing. But that all remains to be seen. I guess if I had to really summarize this all, I found the class to be interesting, and I think it helped me learn some useful skills and obtain some tools that will be useful to the Creative Outlet podcast. But there's a lot I would have done differently if I taught it, and I at least hope I can incorporate some of these practical skills here into the COP. But that covers everything I want to say here. Let's move into our topics for the day. And like I said, way at the start, which is already like 36 minutes ago, which is crazy to me that I went on that long. Today's going to be a little different because instead of covering 4 smaller topics, I'm going to have just one gigantic topic, which is exactly why I'm not doing segments, because I would basically get 2 videos, which is not worth it. So first, I guess I should clarify why we're doing this. E3 2021 just ended last week. So first, let me get my little bit of gloating out of the way and say that E3 did not die as many had predicted. Although it was not certainly there in the same way that it was pre-2020. It was all virtual events. And I am still convinced that E3's on borrowed time. But I think the Scott the Woz E3 video, which quite literally released yesterday, from when I'm recording this, put it best when he said, what really needs to stick around for E3 isn't necessarily E3 itself. It's just having this little week where, hey, everybody in gaming is just having conferences at the same time, so we all come together to celebrate. I am very much down with that, and no, that is not the only time Scott will be referenced in this, because I did get I think he said a lot of very reasonable things that I want to reiterate on here. So my plan for discussing the Electronics Entertainment Expo news, I really only want to go over the things that were interesting to me from the shows, or that I found like, oh, this is probably significant, so I should cover it, even though I may not find it interesting. And to mix it up as well, I also want to include a couple of presentations that happened before E3 as well. Specifically, I want to talk about Sonic Central, because there was hardly any Sega stuff at E3, let alone Sonic the Hedgehog things. And I want to talk about the Dragon Quest 35th anniversary stream. Because those are of course a couple of series that I'm interested in. They didn't get a single new announcement at E3, and I want to talk about them. And of course, all of these pieces that I am talking about will have video links in the description of this episode on either format. So if you do really need a visual, because I am not confident enough to put footage of these unreleased games that are copyright of other people into my episodes, and since they don't exist, I can't record footage, I would recommend going to those links instead, which, I mean, hey, I guess on the other hand, that's probably a good thing too, because then that means that's that should greatly cut down on my editing time. Though I will try to put in, logos and images where appropriate. So why don't we start there with those pre-E3 presentations, and I'm going to go through all the shows, covering them in the order that they went up for folks to view. So let's start with Sonic Central, and like with the Mario 35th anniversary direct from a few episodes ago, I just want to limit myself to the bigger things. Like, I could talk about how, hey, some guy talked about Sonic Prime, which is the upcoming Netflix show, but that's about all we know. And that's about all I have to say on it. Hey, I covered Sonic Prime, great. The stream announced Sonic Colors Ultimate, which is a brand new remaster of the 2010 Wii game. I do own it. Of course, so that means it is a game that I would talk about in my Sonic 30th anniversary focused episode, so I'm going to leave my opinions for there. But what you need to know about Colors Ultimate is that it's coming to all major consoles and PC this September instead of just being a Switch exclusive like how the original game were exclusive to Wii and DS. The developers are this company Blind Squirrel Entertainment, who I've never heard of, but apparently they worked on the Mass Effect Legendary Collection. And really, they're not reinventing the wheel here entirely. I mean, I guess a little bit. They're making the game look prettier and actually HD, since the Wii isn't HD. Instead of getting extra lives, you now get Tails saves. So if you fall down a pit, Tails will just bring you back to the stage, which is awesome. I like that. But, they're not really doing a ton. I don't know how it's going to be so ultimate beyond being HD and having a couple of changes, but ultimately we will find out later this year, 2021. There's also going to be a brief 2-episode animated short called Sonic Colors Rise of the Wisps that will accompany the game. Including the voice talents from the games, like Roger Craig Smith as Sonic the Hedgehog. And I really only bring that aspect up because I want to comment on just what a strange situation there was, where I don't remember if it was February or if it was March or whenever it was, but he's like, yeah, I think I'm done with being Sonic. And then later this year, when they announced this, it's like, hey, I think I'm going to continue being Sonic. So I'm assuming there was some weird legal contractual things happening there where he was briefly out of the contract and then Sega pulled him back in. It was just weird, but whatever. I don't know if this is a hot take, but I think Roger Craig Smith is the best Sonic. So I'm glad he's back. That's all I really have to say about it. There was the new Sonic Origins announced, which is really just a glorified collection of the Genesis Sonic games, which, that alone wouldn't be especially interesting because those games have been released so many times. But, this is significant if only because it includes widescreen versions of all of these games, which that alone could make my experience playing them way better. But I will save that for the Sonic episode. And probably the most important piece is that it is going to include the first re-release of Sonic 3 and Knuckles since the Sonic Classic Collection on DS in 2010. That game has not seen the light of day in a collection for 11 years. And usually the assumption is that it's because of the music. I would assume that's probably correct. So it's fantastic to see that conjoined twin of games coming back again. And like I said, my opinions on those games and Sonic Colors will be in the upcoming Sonic 30th anniversary episode releasing at some point this fall. So just stay tuned for that, folks. I'm sorry that I'm not diving deep into it. And finally, in that show, a brand new Sonic Team-made game was announced for all current hardware. We're talking Xbox One, PS4, Nintendo Switch, PS5, Xbox Series X, and PC. But aside from the CGI teaser of Sonic running through a forest and making a rune, we don't really know anything. There is some speculation on the title being Sonic Rangers based on some leaks, But I firmly believe in not delving into any of that sort of stuff, because if they're wrong and I'm just like referring to, if for whatever reason I talked about this frequently, if I was talking about Sonic Rangers, Sonic Rangers, Sonic Rangers, and then suddenly it's oh, that title was wrong. I that's going to destroy my credibility, and I don't want to do that. I am a firm believer in, let's wait until we actually know what's happening. And that's the same reason why, even though I could have talked about this game, a certain game that I'm very excited for that we'll be talking about later in this episode, all the way back in like November, I wanted to wait because I didn't want to contribute to any rampant hype or speculation without concrete evidence that the game even existed. If you know me and what I like, you probably know what I'm talking about, but I will actually talk about it later. But that's everything in Sonic Central that I found interesting. Not too long after that, or actually it might have been the other way around. I may have flipped this. This may have been the night before. There was the Dragon Quest 35th anniversary event, and there were only really 4 significant announcements here for me. Like, there were 6 things announced. And I guess if you want to be defeatist, you could argue that there's only 3, since only 3 of these 6 games are, well, confirmed to be coming to the West. But I do want to start with one additional one, and in fact, I want to start there. And that's with Dragon Quack or something. Dragon Quest 10 Offline. This is significant because, if there is a single shot of anything Dragon Quest X related coming out to the West, it is Dragon Quest X Offline. And here's why. With the the normal MMO version of Dragon Quest X was discussed just before this. They announced like the 6th version. I don't know a single thing about massively multiplayer online role-playing games, so don't ask me to say what the heck that means, but version 6 of Dragon Quest X was announced, and it was explicitly put on screen next to the guy who was talking about it. There are no plans for a worldwide release, but the same was not true for when they talked about Dragon Quest X Offline. I don't want to say that it is coming, especially with what I just talked about, that I don't want to talk about leaks and any of that business, but if there is a chance to get anything from this lineage, I guess, of Dragon Quest X, this is it. I want to put that out there. If there is the slimmest of slim chances that anyone at Square Enix sees this, there is an appetite for Dragon Quest X, but I completely understand not wanting to put all of the resources in localizing the MMO, because that would take a lot of text and a lot of time, and I don't think the audience is quite big enough to justify that either. I mean, it would certainly not do as well as Final Fantasy XIV has, but I genuinely, firmly believe that a great compromise would be to localize Dragon Quest X offline, so that way the West has just this little itty bitty taste of this game that has eluded us for 10 years, a decade. That is insane. We just skipped Dragon Quest X. We went from 9 on the DS straight to 11 on the PS4. Let's get something for Dragon Quest X. This is a Roman numeral 10, not just an X. But as far as things are actually confirmed for the West, Dragon Quest III HD 2D Remake is going to be the 3rd game that uses Square Enix's new HD 2D engine. The first game to do that, of course, was Octopath Traveler, which I didn't pick up, but, this I'm more interested in, if only because, first off, the HD 2D look is gorgeous. If there's anything I cannot say about Octopath Traveler or its sequel that was announced this February, Project Triangle Strategy, it's that they look bad. They look fantastic. And I understand, Yuji Horii and his team explained, here's why we want to do Dragon Quest III first. I get their reasoning, but I will admit, this is probably not one that I'm very excited to play. And it's really only because I have to make a party of my own, And I prefer to have a party that's defined for me, and I need to improve them as they are, like you have in Dragon Quest VIII and Dragon Quest XI. That is entirely a matter of personal preference. So I don't want to have that take away from how brilliant Dragon Quest III: The Seeds of Salvation, that's its subtitle, is considered. But I could just foresee myself for as significant of a game, especially in the series Dragon Quest III is considered. This would probably not be one that I'm super pleased with, but I have to try the game. I could very well be wrong and find that I suddenly have a big appetite for RPGs where I make my protagonists. As far as the other games, there was Dragon Quest Treasures. It's a game that we know very little about. It stars child versions of some significant characters in Dragon Quest XI. Eric, who's your first party member that you gain with the hero, he's a thief, as well as his sister Mia. I don't know anything about Mia because I've not gotten very far in Dragon Quest XI-S, admittedly. But I know that she is her sister based on what they talked about. And aside from that, and the title, and that it'll be heading westward, and that it's about treasure, and it's an RPG, that's about all we really know. So that's all I can really say is, hey, it's an RPG about Eric and Mia. It's got treasure. And that's about it. I can't really say anymore until more information comes out. And really, once more info comes out, that's when I'll make the decision on, yeah, I'm going to pick this up, or no, I'm not going to pick this up. Kind of like I did for Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury. Man, am I glad that I did not pre-order that right away when it was announced, because I would have been severely disappointed. So I guess I'll say I'm tepidly interested in it. And of course, the final game shown in that show was the big one, the one that everyone who is a Dragon Quest fan has been wanting for a while now. We have finally received confirmation and a title for Dragon Quest XII, The Flames of Fate. And I tell ya, I am not sure what to make of this. I don't know for sure if the darker tone is going to work out. I jokingly in my head said that I hope this is not the Shadow the Hedgehog of Dragon Quest. But, I have faith in Yuji Horii and his team to know what they're doing. Even though it's going to be dark, I don't think it's going to, be super hyper-realistic or anything. It was just seeing what it was pretty shocking, because it seems like a pretty big departure from how the past games were. Because it isn't like prior games in the series haven't delved into dark themes, like slavery, for example, is a major plot thread in Dragon Quest V. But I don't know. I guess not really knowing anything about it, I have a hard time seeing how like Akira Toriyama's art style will shine through, and like what the music is going to sound like, if it's going to be this darker game. But like I said, all we know is the title, the game's going to be darker, and that fire is clearly going to be important if the subtitle is The Flames of Fate. So I will reserve real judgment until later. But that was a pretty big piece there. So that covers all the pre-E3 shows. There's a couple of shows that I'm skipping over here. I'm just going to jump right into the Ubisoft Forward, and I will readily admit there were only two things that really stuck out to me there. There's this game, Riders Republic, that seems interesting, but I have cautious interest. I genuinely don't really know much about it, because all of these shows were happening these past couple of weeks where I was finishing my classes. So I didn't do a ton of research into the Ubisoft one, because usually they don't show anything. The only one that I really did any research on was my highlight for the show, which is Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope, which is a sequel to Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle. And I am interested in this game. I probably will pick it up. Actually, I probably won't pick it up right away, because honest goodness, Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle goes on sale all the time, so I have no reason to pick it up right away. Because I don't need to spend $60 on it, even if it is a Mario game. I finished the first world of Kingdom Battle. I've been trying to go through it and finish the challenges. But man, some of these challenges are hard. I should really just move on to the second world and just keep going in the game, I'll be honest. I don't know why I'm going for the challenges, even though I really want that 100%, man. But yeah, I mean, for being a tactical role-playing game, which is far from anything that I regularly play, I've actually enjoyed it quite a bit. So I think Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope is going to be really... it's a game that I think I will enjoy if I pick it up. It's great to see David Soliani and his team... Like, it looks like they've truly expanded the game. And of course, how do you expand... from just the world of the Mushroom Kingdom, go to space. That's why Super Mario Galaxy is so great. And man, I'm so curious because the villain doesn't appear. I mean, the villain in the original wasn't Bowser either. It was really Bowser Jr. So I want to know more about this evil, bad, giant-looking guy. And there's going to be new Rabbid Mario characters. We already had Rabbid Mario, Peach, Luigi, and Yoshi. Actually, that's interesting. I haven't seen hide or hair of Yoshi or Rabbid Yoshi in this yet. So I'm wondering if they're getting rid of Yoshi or what, because that'd be kind of sad. That was actually one of the things I really liked about Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, is even if it is technically a spin-off, it's nice to see Yoshi in an adventure instead of just golfing and tennising and all this other, not adventure sort of stuff. And there wasn't even any reference to Donkey Kong or I think it was like Rabbid Cranky Kong, which that's pretty funny. Any of the Donkey Kong Adventure DLC stuff from the original game. And I think that's a little disappointing to me. I wish there had been a little of that. But no, I mean, now we have Rabbid Rosalina as a new character, even though we haven't even seen regular humanoid Rosalina. So I want to know more. Let's see, as far as other things about it, Grant Kirkhope is coming back for the music. If that name doesn't have any significance to you, then you haven't played Banjo-Kazooie or Donkey Kong 64. So that's, I'm not wearing it today. I'm wearing my a new Pikmin shirt instead of anything else. But Rare is significant for me as someone who loves Donkey Kong Country and really enjoys Banjo. So that's really, really fun for me to see that he's coming back after scoring Kingdom Battle. I also want to say, I am not a fan of CG trailers, and I really do wish they had led with more gameplay, but fortunately for Ubisoft, they did show gameplay of Sparks of Hope, so I can give them a pass on this. But the way that CG trailer looked, if that is not how the Illumination Mario movie looks, I am going to be very disappointed, because the way that trailer looked is absolutely fantastic. It was, the characters acted how they should act. The visuals themselves were absolutely beautiful, HD, clear, with like all these little details. Just, it was amazing. For as much as the trailer didn't really tell us very much. So, sorry to Riders Republic for not really talking much about you. I only really had 2 things for the Ubisoft show, so I didn't do a ton of research into that show, but I did do a lot of research on these other shows that had big things, like the next one we're talking about, which is the Xbox and Bethesda showcase. Now, I do not own Xbox One. Lex owns an Xbox One S. I'm pretty sure that's the name. I cannot remember. Let alone, neither of us own a Series X or a Series S. So my interest in what was going to be shown here was already pretty limited. And of course, this little guy here is the only PC I own. So, I could not get excited over too many of the announcements. But all things considered, I do think Microsoft had a sufficient presentation. I saw also Pro Jared's reaction to some of these, and he said that the Xbox and Bethesda showcase was the best one. I would disagree, even with, I'm trying very hard to take my preference blinders off here. I still think, regardless, Nintendo had the best show. And really, the main flaw in the Xbox Bethesda presentation was that cardinal sin I just talked about, which is not showing gameplay and just showing a CG trailer. Just showing a CG trailer to get us hyped is not acceptable, because I don't know anything about your game if you don't show me gameplay. What is supposed to inspire me to want to play your game if you're not playing the game? Like, duh. We've had years and years of E3s, and yet developers and publishers keep getting that wrong, and people still keep pre-ordering the games straight away from E3 without knowing anything about the games. That irritates me. But all that aside, I do want to give some significant games their due, even if they aren't ones that I will pick up, starting, of course, with Starfield. So Bethesda's had a pretty rocky relationship over the last few years. Like, they've had their good games, like Doom, well, that's more an id Software game, I guess, but it's published by Bethesda. That was a good game, but then they also need to do things like make Fallout 76, which granted sounds like it's gotten better. I have not played it, so I have zero frame of reference, but it sounds like the situation surrounding that game is a lot better than it was before. But I cannot imagine that they're just like free and clear now. I would assume they still have ground to make up. And, Starfield has the benefit of actually being a brand new IP for Bethesda, which they haven't really done in years. So, I guess I really hope their goal with Starfield is to make it be more than just Fallout in space, because that was one of the impressions I saw people say is like, man, this reminds me a lot of Fallout, but it's in space. So, regardless, I think it's great to see new IPs at an E3 show, especially from major developers. That was probably one of the reasons that Splatoon worked out so well when it came out in 2015, and why Splatoon 2 and, of course, now Splatoon 3 have a big following. But we'll need to see more of the actual game being played. There's this game there, Back for Blood, which seemed pretty significant. Again, that is not something that would be my thing to play, but it sounds like it's made by the same people who worked on Valve's Left 4 Dead series. Though I want to caution everyone, this is another spiritual successor deal, kind of in the Mighty Number 9, Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, and Yooka-Laylee vein. So look, I'm glad that people are getting a new game in that style that they want, but I would be cautiously optimistic, because, those three games that I listed off are all wildly different quality games. Mighty Number 9 is considered pretty bad, Bloodstained is considered brilliant, and Yooka-Laylee is considered somewhere in the middle. So, I have no reason to think that Back for Blood is going to be this terrible game, but I wish fans of Left 4 Dead who are looking forward to it all the best. Sea of Thieves got a little bit of focus. That's Rare's current baby. So of course, even though I'm not playing it, I still have a little stake, and it's like, man, I want to see Rare continue to do well. They're getting a Pirates of the Caribbean crossover update, and any Disney related crossover itself is already significant. It's just not something I plan on playing. I am glad to see Rare actually back in Microsoft's focus in a serious way, because the years of them making just Connect games, that made me very sad, because I would have loved to see them continue putting out actual creative adventures. I would love a new Banjo game or a new Conquer game, but I'll just have to see what happens. There was a game that apparently had been shown before at Xbox E3s, that actually somewhat piqued my curiosity. This is actually the first time I've heard of it. It's called 12 Minutes. And it looks like it's a narrative-focused independent game. And that's something that I would really enjoy. Like, the way that it looked to me, I did look for a little bit of gameplay, since, hey, gameplay actually does exist of that. And it seems like I would describe it as, like, a mixture of a point-and-click and PT, the playable teaser. I assume people remember that. That was the Hideo Kojima teaser for Silent Hills that Konami eventually canceled because they're Konami. That was really scary, but you just kind of went through the same hallway over and over again, and it was really creepy. And I get the same idea from this, because essentially you're playing out the same 12 minutes of this guy's life over and over, unless he dies first, of course. And you're trying to make the events that happen and it play out differently. Like the example I saw, I don't know if this is spoilers. I don't know if people really care if there's spoilers. The game isn't out yet. But like the clip I saw had a police officer show up and handcuff this guy's wife and himself, and the cop kills him. And so when he comes back to life and you replay it again, instead you as the guy, the husband in this case, you go into the bathroom and hide and come out later to defend your wife from the officer. So I think things like that are interesting. That seems like the kind of game that, if I'm sick of playing Ace Attorney, that Lex and I might want to sit down and check out. I would hope that it comes to platforms other than Xbox one day, because I would like to play it. But, if I have to play it on PC, that is what it is. I would love an excuse to play more PC games as well. And, I don't know, I guess from what little I do know about the game, my main gripe with it is it looks so simple because it's like a 2-room place that I've seen so far. And it just, for how long it seems like it's been in development, like I've seen videos dating back 6 years, it seems like this game should have been out the door already. But I guess to be fair, I have never released a game, and look how long it takes me to make some of these podcasts, which should be, in theory, simple endeavors. So I don't have any right to say that, but it seemed a little weird to me that it's taken so long. But that is what it is. Another game that stuck out to me is Psychonauts 2. So I've never had the opportunity to play the original Psychonauts. So Psychonauts 2 isn't like super especially important to me yet, since I have not touched Psychonauts 1. But I really want to try that first game, because it's supposed to be a classic 6th generation platformer with interesting themes about entering people's minds, and like the protagonists, Rasputin's psychic powers are really truly fleshed out, like levitation and fire powers and all sorts of stuff like that. And, the Psychonauts 2 appears to be continuing in that same vein, with Rasputin truly becoming a psychonaut. So, I'm just glad to see a platformer at Xbox's show instead of some sort of really gritty and adult thing, like the next bit I'm going to talk about, which is, Halo Infinite got a good bit of time. They showed that the campaign and the multiplayer look like they're going to be 2 separate games, and it looks like the multiplayer is going to be free to play, and I'm not sure exactly what Microsoft means by that, if they mean that in the free to play, we're going to have a ton of microtransactions sort of way, or free to play, we're going to have like a subscription sort of way, or what exactly, or if they just mean free to play as in you just don't need to pay for Xbox Live to play it, or what they mean. But I'm just happy for those who wanted a new Halo, but I don't have any interest in picking it up. It just seems like a significant game that needs talking about. As did another game. Like, there is going to be Diablo 2 Resurrected, which Blizzard fans seem to be hyped for, considering that the alternative to that was like when Diablo Immortal was announced for mobile. I'm just glad, again, I'm just glad that people are happy and getting the games that they want, but I could not care less. Let's see. I only have a couple other things for the Xbox portion here. Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. I don't know if 2020 is part of the title, but just plop that in parentheses there. It is coming to consoles, which of course would be Xbox One and Xbox Series X and S. So I'm glad to see folks outside of the PC realm be able to play it. I am interested in Microsoft Flight Simulator because I think it would be fun. I think flying planes would be fun, but I would probably want to play a demo or someone else's copy first because I would imagine it's a pretty complicated game as well, which is no surprise since it's about simulating flying a plane. If I just have to stick with Pilot Wings, that is a-okay for me. But, again, credit to Microsoft for having actually a good few games here that it's like, oh yeah, I would play that. I mean, granted, I'm just talking 3 games, which is far less than I'm going to talk about with a certain other presentation later, but that's better than other years where I would be interested in nothing. Let's see, Forza Horizon 5 was announced. I know that's a huge thing for some racing fans, but I prefer arcade racers to realistic racers, so I'm glad for the Forza fans. But like a lot of this, I find it hard to care. It's hard, with the way that technology is, especially in the graphical department, it's hard to see how they're going to continue making the games look any better. But, if it makes people happy, that's great. But that covers just about everything I have to say about the Xbox show. So I guess, final impressions. I know people really liked it, but I cannot, even taking my blinders off, I don't know how people can say that it was the best show of E3. And I mean, to be fair, I have to give Microsoft credit with their tagline for this is the most diverse lineup in Xbox history. I don't think it's entirely false because there are plenty of cartoony looking games, unique games to go with the realistic standard, like your Battlefields, your Halos they've been doing for a while. But still, those gritty, mature games still seem to be the ones that are winning out. And like I said, so many of the games showcased were just CGI trailers. And I can only get so excited from seeing a CGI movie that shows what I might get out of the game. So, okay, just show more gameplay. Period. No questions. I guess even if they did that, though, that kind of gets to one of my biggest critiques of the showcase is those few major games that were there still felt pretty generic. Anyone can make a team-based cooperative zombie shooter. Maybe Back 4 Blood is going to be unique in some way, but I feel like just about any team can do that. Anyone can make a racing simulator if they try hard enough. And to be fair, I'm just not a big fan of Bethesda's work, so I just, I don't like getting lost in massive worlds, even though I can see why people may find that appealing. Realistically, if I only limited this discussion here to the games that I was interested in, we probably would have talked about those 3 games. 12 Minutes, Psychonauts 2, and oh goodness, what is the other one? Oh, Microsoft Flight Simulator. That's about all I would have talked about. So, I guess it's a good lesson in having a good show. Microsoft had a solid show. They did the basics well, but it wasn't an exciting show. And I guess to be fair, I also can't be too harsh on Microsoft for that because I am the person who a few months ago in my Direct Drought segment talked about how it's not every show has to be this mind-blowing, amazing experience. But there is value to creating some hype. And where Microsoft seems to have faltered, in my estimation, with their presentation is they did not create much hype at all, and that could come to hurt them. So, and when I say it could come to hurt them, I think it's troubling that, what they should be doing right now is trying to get people to want an Xbox Series X or Series S, not just because it's rare and no one can get their hands on it. They should try to get people to be like, man, look at all the amazing games coming out for Series X. I have to get it. So, and I don't know if they necessarily did that with their presentation, but I could be wrong. I'm always open to being wrong. So let's move on to the next show, which was the Square Enix Presents. This is actually not the first one of these, but like the first one that I briefly saw, there was not a single thing that I got excited about here. There are plenty of significant things. There's the reveal of the new Guardians of the Galaxy game, and I don't know who thought that Square Enix would be the best publisher for Marvel's Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy. I know the Avengers game wasn't like a giant splash in that it didn't get like reviewed amazingly. So I hope Guardians of the Galaxy works out better for Square Enix. And the impression seems to be that people think this game's going to work out better, but that they spent too much time on it in the show. So, just do with that what you will. I don't know what to make of Square Enix doing these Marvel games. One of the few things, though, that seemed actually pretty exciting was the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster series. Well, I should say it sounded exciting on paper, because thinking back to like what Scott Wiles is talking about, he raised a pretty interesting point in his video, which is that all these games are being made for Steam and mobile. And Steam and mobile can already play most of these games already. I would agree with them in that I'm confused, like, why is the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster series not going to be on consoles? Like, I can't pick up Final Fantasy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 on my Switch. I would love to do that. I can play Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, 10, and 12, and a butchered version of 15, but I can't play any of those 6 original games, so why, like, I mean, I guess I don't know what the case is for the PS4 or the PS5 or the Xbox systems, but I would assume that's the case there too, so even if the idea is supposed to be that Square Enix wants to test the market in mobile, just, like, throw the first trilogy up on consoles or something and see how that does too. It's worth the R&D, because these haven't had console releases in a long time. But honestly, outside of that, I don't know what in this presentation was supposed to generate hype. Like, there's the Life is Strange stuff. I don't really know anything about the series, so I can't really say, like, if what they showed was amazing, fantastic, if it just kind of, like, was, like, there. It's never really something I've been interested in trying. Maybe I'm missing out. I don't know. But I'm not sure what in this was supposed to, like, make me be excited for these Square Enix games. There's that Team Ninja Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin game, which looks like a hack and slash sort of interpretation of the original Final Fantasy, which, again, that's another thing that sounds interesting on paper, but I don't know if that's what the audience, like the Square Enix audience, wants. And that was the vibe that I got from the whole presentation. Like, I get the impression that Square Enix apparently doesn't know what their audience is or who they are. Because, maybe it's just me, but when I think of Square Enix, I think of JRPGs. For better or for worse, I think of Dragon Quest. I think of Final Fantasy. And the fact that there's not any mention, as far as I can recall, other than maybe like it showing up in a sizzle reel of like Final Fantasy 16, is ridiculous. Like, this would have been the perfect time to really showcase it. And it isn't as if Square Enix doesn't make games that aren't JRPGs, but I don't know, even though it's been like at least 8 years, I don't know how many people associate Tomb Raider with Square Enix as opposed to Eidos. I mean, they own Eidos, who made Tomb Raider, but I associate Tomb Raider with Eidos, not Square Enix. And I'm just conflicted. Like, if I were Square Enix, I would want to focus these presentations on those bread and butter series and let those other games be shown at other people's presentations. Like, there's no reason why Life is Strange, like, it showed up in the Nintendo Direct. So why not just, instead of doing a whole portion in your own presentation about it, just put it in the Nintendo Direct and it'll be fine. Like, there's no reason why Guardians of the Galaxy had to be shown in this presentation instead of the Xbox presentation. In fact, Guardians of the Galaxy also came up again in the Nintendo Direct, although that's a cloud version, which I hope these cloud versions of games are good for people. I have not played a single one yet, if only because of my reservations already with cloud gaming from Stadia and Luna. And, just to be clear, I don't mean to be disrespectful to the developers here. I think they're, like, whatever they're making will probably be fantastic work. I just happen to think that people have a particular image in mind when they hear that there's going to be a Square Enix presentation, and what Square Enix showed did not meet that. Now, that just brings us to our last couple. The Capcom presentation was interesting, but let's be real, I'm only going into depth into one game here. But, I should start with my impressions on the fuller show. If you read anything that Capcom had put out about the show before you watched it, they didn't lie. What they said they would show: Resident Evil 8 Village updates, Monster Hunter Rise updates, Monster Hunter Stories 2 Wings of Ruin, updates in the Capcom Pro Tour, and of course Game of the Year 2021. I mean, the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. That's what they showed. That's exactly what they showed. And I appreciate that honesty. Although, of course, I agree with folks in that I was really hanging on. It's like, I wanted that, ooh, we have just one more thing surprise. Of course, what I would have wanted that surprise to be is probably way different from what everyone else would have wanted, which would be the Ace Attorney Trilogy 2 with Apollo Justice, Ace Attorney through Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney Spirit of Justice. But it is what it is. They showed exactly what we were told they would show. So now let's finally talk about the game that I've been gushing over since its announcement in April, because us Ace Attorney fans have waited 6 long years for the first great Ace Attorney game and 4 years for the second game to come west. And it's finally actually happening! So, Great Ace Attorney Chronicles is really just a compilation of the two games, which are now formally titled The Great Ace Attorney Adventures and The Great Ace Attorney 2 Resolve. I actually like their Japanese titles better, but I don't need to get off track in that. Really what you need to know is that these games do not follow Phoenix Wright and Company. It follows his Japanese ancestor, Ryunosuke Naruhodo, which, how those two relate is a whole separate longer story that I can talk about when the game actually comes out. But, the idea is that Naruhodo and his assistant, Susato Mikotoba, travel to Victorian England, where Naruhodo becomes, what is it? Oh, yeah, a great ace attorney. Just like his successor, I don't know if that's really the word, but, his great-great-grandson, Phoenix Wright, would become a century later. And along the way, Naruhodo meets the legendary detective Herlock Sholmes, which there is a reason why he's Herlock Sholmes instead of obviously what he should be, which is Sherlock Holmes. And Sholmes just helps him solve the 10 cases spread over the two games. And, I mean, the gameplay for the most part is standard Ace Attorney. You go around investigating locations, you talk to people, you find evidence. I go, more in depth into this, or at least I will when the Ace Attorney episode releases. But inevitably, like I said, you talk to people, you find stuff, evidence, you look at places, you go to court and you find contradictions in people's testimony. But there are some fun twists that make the Great Ace Attorney unique. A pair that the Capcom presentation focused on, like they put center stage on these, and one that they didn't even talk about at all, which is actually the one I'm going to start with. And that's a multi-witness cross-examination returns from Professor Layton versus Phoenix Wright. So if you haven't played that game, one of the unique gameplay mechanics there was that when you did cross-examinations, normally it was just you're looking at the story of one person. Instead, now you might have to compare stories from 3 people. Like, they may make one group joint testimony. And so during that, when you're pressing statements, like you could press a statement from the person on the left side, and then the person way over to the right will go, like, wait a minute, because they will notice it's like, wait, what that person's saying doesn't sound right. So that adds a unique dimension to cross-examinations. The new investigation mechanic is the dance of deduction, as it's called in the English version. The Japanese version called it joint reasoning, where as you're going around and investigating with Sholmes, he will come upon certain people or pieces of evidence, and he will try to use his deductive skills to create a story for what happened. But as Naruhodo will find, his deductions are not always the most accurate. And so he has to find things in the environment or about a person that contradict Sholmes' deductions. So the example they keep using is in case 2, and this isn't really spoilers in my opinion, but if you want, it's fine. I'm going to spoil it anyway, so just skip over it. I will put in a timestamp if it really matters to you, to where Sholmes is talking about this Russian person on the boat they're traveling on over to England, and Sholmes says that the person is holding these giant shear scissors because he is going to cut off his beard. But in reality, if you look around the person, since now this is in 3D with 3D models and everything, you find that, wait a minute, this Russian man with his big bushy brunette beard, for some reason has giant long blonde hair. It's probably that this person was going to cut off that long hair. That would not look right on someone with a big bushy brunette beard, right? And pointing that out exposes that, no, in reality, this person is not an old Russian dude. She is a young Russian lady. And that, of course, keeps the case moving. And the other piece, the other gameplay mechanic that Capcom showcased was the summation examination, otherwise known as the closing argument in the Japanese version, where, because the way that the Great Ace Attorney works is you actually appeal to a jury. Mind-blowing, instead of just appealing to a judge. And eventually they will argue that they will all come to conclusion that, no, your client is guilty. But the rules, the courtroom rules say that the defense is allowed to have a summation examination and basically hear out, why does everybody think this person is guilty? And, you get to point out, hey, wait a minute. The reason this person thinks my client is guilty and the reason this other person thinks my client is guilty is wrong. So the example they use is actually from the 3rd case. Clearly I've read about these a little bit before actually playing them. And it takes place, again, spoilers, where it's in it's not a taxi cab, but it's like a horse-drawn carriage of some kind. I think it's called like an omnibus, or I don't know. Omnibus is what I'll say. And one juror says, obviously he's guilty because, he was stabbed from the side. And the other one's like, no, clearly he's guilty. And, it's just, I cannot believe that he was stabbed lying down. Well, those two things are not the same. So you point those out, and that will get at least one of them to change their verdict to not guilty. And then the trial will get to continue. So, and that it doesn't even get into all the fun bonuses, all the extra artwork, music, the special bonus episodes. Like, I'm so excited for this game to come out, and it's only a month away. July 27th cannot come soon enough because I'm going to play that game very, very much. But before moving on to the big one, the show that even with preference blinders off, people said saved E3, which is admittedly over the top considering that developers just went through the same global pandemic that we all did. Like, come on, guys, really? Let me just briefly state that Bandai Namco had a laughable showing of one game, and that's it. Now for the E3 Nintendo Direct. So there are a lot of things that I could say about this presentation. Like, for starters, it was the best one. I've already said that many times. It was clearly the best one. There was no question which one was going to be the best one. But honestly, I think I liked the February Direct more. And I don't know if that's a hot take, but I found there was more exciting stuff for me in that show. But with all that said, let's talk about a bunch of the stuff that Nintendo showed off here. And they opened the show the right way. New Smash character. I know I have said this at least once or twice on the show before, but I do not structure my show releases around Smash reveals. I promise that. It just works out every time that a Smash reveal happens when I'm available to make an episode of the Creative Outlet podcast. And, regardless of my promises to you that I am not just leading you on here to talk about Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, Kazuya Mishima from Tekken is the new character, and I'll be discussing his presentation as well as my opinions on him as a character in the next episode, so I'm going to hold off until then, but of course, I had to mention it here because I always apparently have to talk about Super Smash Bros. Ultimate in every episode of this show. The next little bit was just things that I already discussed, like the Guardians of the Galaxy game and Life is Strange. I do not need to rehash those, but then Sega, out of nowhere, pulled out the big guns with Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania, which that alone, that doesn't sound very significant until you realize it is a remake of the first 3 Super Monkey Ball games, which are widely considered to be actually the best Monkey Ball games. Now, I picked up Banana Blitz HD last year, but I have not had the opportunity to try it out. I've just been playing a bunch of other stuff, but I do want to make a point of if/when I get Banana Mania that I'm going to actually play it, since, like I said, these are the games that are considered to be the premier Monkey Ball experiences, so I want to see if they live up to the hype for me. Now, the next game that Nintendo showed, though, answered something people have wanted for years. Mario Party Superstars is genuinely the best chance Nintendo has at releasing a Mario Party game that will receive universal acclaim, because it is a game that remakes 5 boards from the 3 Nintendo 64 Mario Party games and brings back 100 classic minigames from across the series. So, I've heard people say, oh, so it's Mario Party the top 100, but good. Yes, that is exactly what it is. Also, if anything, this game is going to be leagues better than Super Mario Party because I can play it in handheld mode and not with just a single Joy-Con, so I'll actually be able to play it more than I played Super Mario Party. And it's funny because earlier this year there was, just completely out of the blue, an update to Super Mario Party that made it so that all of the modes could be played online. But now that we know about Mario Party Superstars and that you can do that in that game as well, it kind of all makes sense now, doesn't it? This is the strongest that Mario Party has been shaping up in a long time. It has boards people know and love. It has mini games people love. I assume there's probably going to be a few stinker mini games in there, but that just kind of always happens. And the regular game can be played online. Those are all things that people have wanted for years, is online Mario Party, classic boards, classic minigames, and it's all coming together in one game. But I do have some reservations about it. For as much as I'm excited about it, I have some criticisms. So, one thing that I've heard people bring up is there should be more boards. Of course there should be more boards. There's only 5 boards. That isn't even enough to get 2 from every N64 game. And I don't understand why the team ND Cube would limit themselves to 5 boards when they're not making new boards anyway. The creative work is already cut out. So, as far as the concept stage, I mean. They still have to do all the art and the programming and making it work. So, why not just make more? If all the concept work is already done for you, why not go with 7 or 8 boards? And like I said, I don't know why it's just Nintendo 64 boards either, because there's why not just do one classic board from all 8 of the console games. Although if they went with 9 and included a Mario Party DS board, I think I would actually, like, my mind would actually explode, because that's the best Mario Party game. Sorry, everyone else is wrong. And, I don't know if this is just me, but I have reservations about the graphics. Like, the game, I mean, don't get me wrong, the game looks good, but the aesthetic on the boards looks very different from the Super Mario Party aesthetic. And to me, it looks like they clash to me, and I don't know if that's just a me thing or if there's anyone else who thinks it, but there's just something about seeing the UI and the character models and the lighting from Super Mario Party on the Nintendo 64 boards, even if they are obviously updated, that just looks off. So, let's see, what's the next game? Oh, the next game is actually one that I probably will not care for personally, but, I would be remiss in talking about it. That is, like, I still can't process this. Metroid Dread is finally going to be a real game. And, the long and short of why I'm not going to get it is just because, like open world games, I feel like I would get lost too easily in a Metroidvania. But that, that doesn't make the fact that this game is real any less significant. I see all sorts of people talking about that a certain other game that I'll talk about later was the game of the show. But, in my opinion, Metroid Dread is the game that should have the title of being the game of the Nintendo Direct, if not the game of E3. Because you have to remember, Metroid Dread is a game that's been on and off in development since the DS era. It essentially, what's happening here is a game that was once a lost game is really going to be real and in people's hands in 4 months. This is a game that's been in development for 15 years. And, not like that. It's not to mention even just talking about the actual substance of the game itself. First off, it looks beautiful. The lighting is fantastic and adds to the spooky atmosphere. And I guess, the atmosphere, of course, is important because Metroid Dread is going beyond just the basic Metroid idea of adventuring these dark, spooky caverns, trying to get power-ups, because now you're also being chased by Galactic Federation robots called Emmy, which isn't, I guess it's not too different from what happened with the SAX and Metroid Fusion. But, in that sense, I feel like the team at Mercury Steam, who also worked on Metroid Samus Returns, is really taking that subtitle of Dread to heart, because these Emmy robots, from what I've seen, they turn Metroid from not just being spooky to almost straight up survival horror-like. Of course, for me, I guess one of the things that was significant, in my opinion, was this was the only game that was shown that had new amiibo figures announced, in the form of a Samus figure and an Emmy figure. They don't do anything especially unique. Samus just replenishes your health daily, and Emmy gives you like 10 extra missiles and then replenishes them daily, and that's about it. But, they look as neat as the Samus Returns amiibo, so maybe I will pick them up at some point. I don't know. I have not decided yet, but apparently I should soon, because they're getting real expensive, and I would rather pay $25 than pay $80 or $100 for them. There's actually one game in one of the sizzle reels that did catch my eye, and that was Cruisin' Blast. It's an arcade game that is receiving a home console release on Switch. And first off, that dynamic just doesn't seem very common anymore. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but it doesn't seem like there's a ton of arcade games that come out in the first place. This isn't like the 80s and 90s, where arcade games are all over. More importantly, this is the type of racing game that I would want to play. This is an arcade racer. So I guess I would want more games that justify getting something like this first. But of course, with it being an actual arcade cabinet first, I would think a racing wheel would make Cruise and Blast really fun. And I mean, I know the arcade version's fun. I mean, I haven't played it, I guess, so maybe I'm wrong. But you know, this is Cruise and Blast is in the same vein as past cruising games. I've played like Cruise and Exotica. I found that at the arcade once. And, you know, it's by Raw Thrills, and they've made the Fast and Furious games for years, and I've played those various times, and those are fun. So, yeah, I'm actually pretty interested in picking it up. But there are also a couple of reservations I have with this. Like, what is the price point? Because I probably would not pick up Cruise and Blast for more than, like, $30 tops. And the physical version is coming from this company Game Mill Entertainment, which I find particularly concerning because, I mean, I don't know how much control they're going to have over the home console release, but they're a huge purveyor of Switch shovelware, like that Nickelodeon Kart Racers is one of their games. But I want to remain agnostic until the game comes out, but I just those are some little things that are making me question it. Let's see. Mario Golf Super Rush got mentioned in the show, despite the fact that when it aired on June 15th, it would still be coming out in 10 days, and literally today it's coming out in 4 days. So, I mean, I'm glad I got to hear that there's going to be additional updates through the game. And that was actually something that I disagreed with when Scott talked about it in his video is, you know, I think the way that it's going to happen is going to make me want to continue coming back to the game. And part of that is because I've played a better and worse version of this model of feature updates. You know, I played Mario Tennis Aces, and I consider that to be a better model. And I played Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled, which I have a whole separate segment on, and I absolutely hated the way that game did additional content. And I figure, though, since Camelot made Mario Tennis Aces, they're also going to follow that same model for this game, since they're making Mario Golf Super Rush. Admittedly, I didn't like Ace's model at the time, and I'm still not especially excited about. Now I have to return to the game every month, even if I don't want to play it, to unlock whatever little new additions come out. But that's still way better than Crash Team Racing's ridiculous amount of unlockables every month that were limited to that month unless you waited until like a long while after the fact. And we did not, it was not confirmed until after like a couple of months that, oh yeah, these items are just going to come back and they're going to be part of the regular game now. Like, what the heck, Activision? I'm sorry, I went on a Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled rant when I should have been talking about Mario Golf. But I talked about it a good bit in the February Direct segment, so either way, I'm excited for that game. I think it's going to be very fun, and I'm going to get it on Friday, and I'm going to play it a whole bunch. We're almost to the end of this. So there's going to be a new WarioWare game. It's WarioWare Get It Together. And to me, it looks like the perfect post-pandemic game. And it comes out in September, too. And hopefully the world should be looking a little brighter then. I don't know. I'm hopeful. But I don't know for sure. We'll have to actually see how things work out in practice. But I think this game is perfect, considering that, you know, like if Animal Crossing New Horizons was the perfect game for entering the pandemic and we all have to be alone, WarioWare Get It Together is based on 2-player and being this quick little party game that you get people together. But like actually, I guess discuss the meat and potatoes, the gameplay. It looks interesting, but I do wish it took advantage of the Switch's unique features more. Like there's no reason why this game should not use motion controls. I mean, I guess if it at least uses HD Rumble, that'll be fine. But I find it odd that the direction that Intelligent Systems went for their first WarioWare game on Switch was, let's just try putting the characters into the micro games and give them all unique controls. Like, I mean, that's still fun. And I think that was going to make micro games interesting, where like if Wario's flying around with a jetpack and then you have some like 18-volt who can only use his yo-yo to knock things around, to accomplish the same goal, that's going to be interesting, and it's going to make, you know, a micro game with 3 levels really end up being a micro game with 3 levels plus all the different characters who can play it. So it looks fun. Of course, I have to talk about Shin Megami Tensei 5. It's finally going to be coming out after being announced all the way back in January January 2017 at the original Switch event. I'm just really excited to see that game's finally coming to fruition after having been in development for so long. But other than that, that's all I really have to say about it. I'm not a bit, like I said, I am limited in what I like for role-playing games. And Shin Megami Tensei, I'm not sure if that's it. Apparently it's going to be a new collection of all 3 of the Danganronpa games coming to Switch, which is interesting to me because that series really should be something that I'm interested in, because it's a series that is in the vein of Ace Attorney, but I've never been too enthusiastic about them because, and granted, I haven't played them, I've just watched videos about them, but there's just aspects I don't understand. Like, I feel like the way that Ace Attorney does things tries to be very user-friendly, sometimes to the point where it backfires, where, like, I think about with investigations, you cannot progress to the next portion until you've done and collected actually everything, which sometimes makes you run into the issue that it's like, where do I need to go to keep going? But Danganronpa in what little I've seen looks unfriendly, and that it seems like I don't know if the court segments are timed. Like, it looks like that's the case. And, like, there's a bunch of mini games that do, like, letters and investigations, or, like, Persona style, like, a mix of, like, life simulation and first-person dungeon crawling, and I don't know what to make of it. But I guess, you know, the worst case is that if there was ever a time for me to try out these games, I feel like, you know, a collection of the main 3 games and one of the spin-offs is the perfect time. So, okay, do with that what you will. Also, I have to say, hooray! Fatal Frame Maiden of Black Water is another Wii U port coming to Switch, because we haven't had enough of those. We are seriously, sooner than later, just going to run out of games to where the Wii U is going to be an irrelevant console. And I can go more into why I'm actually not a fan of that happening another time. But I guess to me the most interesting aspect of that is that, kind of like with, you know, fun fact, if you didn't know this, Bayonetta 2 is also on PC, even though it's was originally a Wii U and Switch game. But Nintendo seems to have given their good graces, like they did for that game, to let Fatal Frame 5 also release on every other platform, including Steam, but not Stadia and Luna, of course. I don't know, Fatal Frame's just kind of in this weird place where it's like it used to be a third-party Koei Tecmo only game, but now it's like a pseudo first-party game, to the point where some of the characters had trophies in Smash 4 and have spirits, and it's just, that's why I bring it up, is it's just interesting to see this scenario. Let's see. Oh, there was Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp, which is supposed to be a remake of the first 2 GBA games in the Wars series. So, yes, if you somehow didn't know, the Wars series has history before Advance Wars, but those are the first games that came westward. And, I mean, the game looks beautiful, but I wouldn't expect anything less from a Nintendo-commissioned game from Way Forward, who already make pretty fantastic games when they put their minds to it. Now, I've never played a Wars game, since I don't really find strategy RPGs to be my thing. Obviously, I played Mario plus Rabbids, but I mostly played that because I wanted another Mario game. But I would be willing to give this a shot, because I did enjoy Mario plus Rabbids, and, you know, especially if Advance Wars as a demo, then, you know, I will certainly try that out and see if I like it. I may end up putting down $60 for it. I don't know. I just, it looks like a basic tactical role-playing game. You move your units, they shoot at each other, they lose some HP. So I guess that's the other thing it's got going for me, is that it actually doesn't seem too complicated, but yeah, I could find myself being wrong. I don't know. And of course we arrive at the last section of the Direct, which, what could end the show but The Legend of Zelda, since it's the 35th anniversary. So, of course, they talked about Skyward Sword HD. I already talked about that in episode 8. So just check that out if you want to hear my thoughts on it. I will probably get it eventually, but not anytime soon. I would sooner get the Zelda and Loftwing amiibo figure, although that's got a whole controversy surrounding it, that they're locking away fast travel behind that $25 figure, which is unacceptable. I just want it because I want a complete collection of figures, but one of the most basic quality of life improvements should not be behind an additional $25 figure. Bottom line, period. And let's see. One of the most exciting things for the Mario 35th anniversary was the Super Mario Brothers Game & Watch, and I feel the exact same way about the Legend of Zelda Game & Watch that's coming out this year in November. And, maybe it's because I'm not super duper into Zelda, but I think that the Game & Watch is a pretty good celebration piece for the 35th anniversary. I mean, yeah, of course I wanted more. As much as I don't want more Wii U ports, I can see the utility of bringing The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker HD or Twilight Princess HD to Switch along with Skyward Sword. But I am still happy with the Game & Watch, and that device is going to go right next to that Super Mario Brothers Game & Watch. This one includes more than that one as well for the same price. So it includes the original Legend of Zelda, Zelda 2, as well as the Game Boy, meaning not the Color DX version of The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. And of course it includes a classic Game & Watch game like the Super Mario Brothers Game & Watch. In this case, it is a Zelda coat of paint on the game Vermin, which I think is more fun than Ball, so I'm more excited for that one. I was already excited for the Super Mario Brothers one because I like Mario better than Zelda, but I think this one's going to be good. I think this one's going to be worth the $50. So, and I don't know. I'm just kind of miffed that people aren't too excited for it. But whatever, to each their own. I guess. I am still really only cautiously excited because I do find the NES Zelda games to be pretty weak games in general, but I will delve more into that in my fall episode on The Legend of Zelda 35th anniversary. So I guess, most of my excitement is just for Link's Awakening and Vermin. I'll say that. That's where I am. And of course, the show ended by showcasing more footage to the sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And I keep bringing him up, but this is the last time that I'll talk about him. But like was said in the Scott the Woz video, it looks like Breath of the Wild. I can go on into my opinions on Breath of the Wild another time, but I have not picked up Breath of the Wild, and it's almost been out for 5 years, and I don't see myself picking up this game either anytime soon. So I hope it's good. Whatever it's going to be, I'm sure it'll be great for the people who like it. I'm not an open world guy, and that's going to have to be fine. So I guess the long story short on the Nintendo E3 show was, yes, it was the best show. But that wasn't saying much because the rest of the expo was kind of underwhelming. Again, even with my blinders off, I think other folks seem to say that the rest of the show is pretty underwhelming. And even then, since Nintendo's been doing these digital directs for E3 since like 2013, it's really not that surprising that they have the digital presentation formula down to a science. It was a bog standard direct with some mind-blowing reveals, and that's all they had to do. All they had to do was show off the sequel to Zelda, Metroid Dread, and Mario Party Superstars. Like, that's all they really needed to do with all the other games coming along the way. Plus, unlike the Xbox show, they kind of showed a lot of, gameplay to go with that. So that's always a big plus, too. So, with that, though, I think that covers everything I wanted to discuss from E3 2021. And it feels kind of weird to end the show with only one topic, but there's just a ton to go over with this week and a half of news, plus a little extra from Sonic Central and the Dragon Quest stream. Next time, though, I think we're going to go with the traditional Creative Outlet podcast format. And even still, like, I still somehow managed to get just shy of 2 hours here. So, I am proud of that. So, folks, please do all of your typical sorts of engagement. That could be your likes, your comments, your subscriptions, voice messages. I want to have voice messages. That's like the one thing that I'm excited for, is to have voice messages. But with that, I look forward to seeing all of you folks again in the next episode. This is Brandon Pudwell signing out for the Creative Outlet Podcast episode number 9.